How does John Law fit into the whole picture?
Well, that's a good question. Uh, John Law's been John Law started working on Burning Man about 6 years ago, and the first time I met John Law, he was beseeching me to burn the man on Baker Beach, uh, in contravention of both the law and the verbal agreement that I made to the representatives of the law, who came down and said, uh, "You can erect this thing." We had 1,000 people, and we tried to sneak a giant 40-foot giant down the down a cliff, which was hard to do. It had grown as large as it ever got in San Francisco, and they'd come down and they'd seen it, and we'd actually convinced them to let us erect it with the provision that we wouldn't burn it, and then they ran away, and uh, to protect themselves, and so that it really was entirely up to us whether we burn it or not. But if we had, it would have burned our bridge with the authorities in town, tenuous as it was. But we actually had a moral relation to them. We had an agreement at that point. I was loath to violate it because I'd given my word, and besides that, I had a video project, and in darkness it fell, and it was impossible to properly treat the figure so as to burn it in a satisfactory way, and I just didn't want to do it. And John was at that point helping uh, helping us with, what was John helping with security, I think, and and involved, I don't know really, perhaps in raising it, or well, probably not in some technical capacity. And 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 he said we've got to do it, uh, and I fought him off, and Jerry James, my principal partner at that point, that was in '96, wanted to was going back and forth and thought we probably should burn it. There was a great. We were surrounded by a crowd of 1,000 people who were filled with fire lust, and wanted to destroy it. In fact, they started yelling, "Burn the fucker!" At which point I determined I wouldn't burn it under any circumstances, and dug my heels into the sand, which isn't a very good thing to anchor yourself in. But and we didn't burn it. We actually lowered it. People tried to burn it. People ran up out of the audience. It became a mob. Suddenly, we were dealing with a mob. This is our 5th year doing it. We were dealing with a mob. We were dealing with, in all the ugliness that implies. They just wanted to see, it was burn the fucker, burn the fucker. Until that point, we had been a small group, and we had invested all this labor into the thing. And so we had an innate respect for the thing we were destroying, but these were people who had no respect for it at all. No respect for it, no respect for us. And I was appalled, and not about to give in to their will, and so we managed to. I actually grabbed a guy who was trying for the third time to light it with a big lighter, and he grabbed me by the throat, and I had to peel him off me. It was, I mean, had he been able to kill me, he probably would have. But we managed to get the figure down, and the burn didn't take place, and that is why later that year we went to the desert. So it was a signal step in the evolution of the project. Going to the desert, of course, created an entirely new event, and so it was an act in a confrontation fraught with drama. And that's how I met John. In fact, I said to Jerry, "Who is this? Who is who is this moron with the handlebar mustaches?" And then I subsequently got to know John, and John is a stalwart and man of action, full of passion, and ready to do, and fervent for uh, uh, in lunatic enterprises, visionary efforts, as few people are, and someone whom I came to depend on greatly, and he became my partner, along with Michael, who they represented what's called the Cacophony Society. John was instrumental in founding it, and Michael soon became the chief organizer and backbone of the enterprise. And so we had this ready-made group in San Francisco that was ready to haul this giant wooden statue out into the blankest space on Earth, 350 miles away, and burn it in the middle of this vast desert. And where are you going to find? Where otherwise are you going to find people who are willing to do something like that? And so we felt we were well met, and became partners as a result.
Excellent. And I guess maybe talk a little bit about Michael's role. Well, I guess and John's currently as far as what they both
Well,
do.
Michael's in charge of. Michael is now the controller, and John is now in charge of operations. Um, Michael's very good at organizing informational systems, and he's a man of absolute probity. So we trust him with money, and it's good to have someone like that in any operation. And John is in charge of our uh, the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure that we depend on in the desert. That includes our major structure at the center of camp. That includes our power grid. That includes scouting the site. He's also a brilliant politician. So we've depended on John many times in the past to interface with the authorities, since we are doing something which, on the face of it, is uh, uh, more than unconventional. We're engaged in this aggressively eccentric activity, which could easily alarm people whose job it is to enforce order. And John is very good at presenting a human face to the authorities. He loves to do it, and convincing them that it's really all right. I think that has something to do with the fact that his father was military, but a military maverick, and so John can square those two ideas in convincing cops that everything, that appearances to the contrary, everything's under control, and we're your friends.